listeners, Harika here, and I'm super excited to welcome you to UppTalk. If you're ready to learn and get your hands work wonders in the world of information technology, then you're in the right place. When I say UppTalk, we are not just another edtech company. Consider we are your learning partner committed to unlocking your full potential. Whether you're stepping into the world of technology for the first time or looking to advance your career, we provide top-tier, hands-on courses to build up your career. Let's take our first step towards learning here and explore it.
Advanced report can be managed with the data in a Tableau format, or also, when you wanted to integrate the data, you know your advanced report works more appropriately. But when you have the requirements to actually view data and having a process of analytic format, there are multiple reports of such types where you can create them and attach to the dashboards. The primary report that comes when you think of data visualization and analytics is matrix report. After advanced reports, in Workday reporting, we mostly will be using advanced report. 80% of Workday reporting will be managed with advanced reporting and all of the rest of the type of reports. Be it matrix, trended and matrix are both same, but the source is a little different. But the way data operates, configuration are all the same. Trended report and matrix reports are same, but trended will be actually looking for trended data ratio of the data. It will be looking only source would be different from matrix and trended, but the data, population configuration, and all everything is same for both reports. And the other report transpose it. Report, search report. We have multiple reports. Accordingly, for those business requirements, when you wanted to view the data based on the search criteria that you wanted to give, you'll go with search report. And when you wanted to interchange data between rows and rows to columns, we'll be using as a transpose report and inbox report for financial accounting. Generally, we'll be using inbox report, which generates output in a two-dimensional matrix format. All these are kind of reports where you'll get very rare requirements to get on this kind of reports. Most of the business requirements will be on advanced report and matrix report. After matrix, you also have a little bit of composite report. But other than these three, after these three, there will be a kind of search report kind of requirement. Other than these four, the transpose report, inbox report, you'll never get a chance. In case if you get a chance. I think those are simple configurations. As how you create advanced report, you'll be creating a transpose report, but the output of the transpose report will be different. In advanced report, you'll be configuring employee details, employee ID, employee name, and whatever you configure as a field. When you run a report, you'll be seeing columns, rows, columns, and rows in a proper format. But your transpose report will populate data in opposite way. Whatever your advanced report is giving, your transpose report will reverse that. Rows will be populated as columns, and columns will be populated as rows and gives you the data. That's the only difference between transport, which you can get the same steps that you will be doing for advanced report. Now, Amit, I have one question. I got pulled off in an important conversation yesterday. Just wanted to check. Have you touched upon the matrix report, how to create them yesterday, or are we going to do it today? Great, great. It's all matrix report concept, drilling down, adding drill down fields, options, and all we are going to cover today. Is that your question or anything related? It's the same question. Now coming to matrix functionality, matrix report functionality. Matrix report type provides basically the foundation of custom analytics, and it actually gives a kind of interactive reporting in Workday. And basically it enables you or it allows you for performing any kind of grouping, any kind of aggregations, and interactive drilling down across your different dimension that you create in when you're creating matrix report. You actually consider groupings, which groups the data. For example, if you wanted to return data based on country, in this country, how many employees are there? Or in this cost center, how many employees are there? Such kind of things, based on country. If you want to get any kind of aggregated count of data, and will be a kind of interactive where you can drill down into the report and view each employee information. All these kind of options you'll be getting in a matrix report. And the main features that you have in matrix report is you have an option of aggregating, summarizing the numeric data, and modifying rows and columns at runtime. For a different view, let's say if you see an advanced report after you run a report, you'll not have an option to, get to the output and drill down into the fields and change the view of the output. That option will not have an advanced report. And only report that we have in Workday that allows you to actually get into output, view, drill down into the fields of the output and change, filter those drill down fields and all. Only your matrix report will allow you to actually drill down into the output file after you run a report. No other report other than matrix report will give you an option in the output to manage the drill down. This is one of the feature and the functionality that we have in Workday. And that is the reason why most of the matrix report will be created. And it gives you an option to drill down and summarizes the data fields that you'll be selecting. And as I said, right now in the output, we should be able to take an action if anything needs to be corrected. This is one of the best features that we have with the matrix report. And basically, there are 3 attributes. I'll also create a report. But before that, basically, while you are creating a matrix reports, grouping is one of the primary things that you need to consider on what basis you want to group the data and summarizing your data, count your data. Average and all will be getting summarized by summarizing. Next drilling. Drilling into each field for to know further information. When you run a report as an output, you have an option to drill down and identify employee details or any other details based on the source that you've chosen. These are the 3 steps. That you're going to perform or you're going to. The long before you create a matrix report. Now, grouping is nothing but group of instances of a primary business object by defining the row and column groupings. If you're configuring any kind of grouping here, it actually groups the data by the column that you're giving here. Let's say cost center. Your entire data will be grouped by cost center and return the data. This percentage of employees are in this cost center and this percentage of employees are in this cost center. This kind of information you will be getting when you're grouping the employees by cost center, that you should be able to get the data as a percentage that you will be configuring. There is nothing but a kind of grouping and summarization. Summarization is nothing but where you define aggregations for each grouping, whatever groupings that you will be performing in groupings area. And there is a Option called summarizing, which actually allows you to define those aggregations for each of the column formulas and report. That's one thing. That you'll be knowing and drill down. Drill down is nothing but which will be your option to drill into the summarization whatever you got in the first step. Drill into the summarization for feature analysis. And it also used to report users who can view the data by other fields, access, and behind the summarizations. This is nothing but whatever drilling that you will be giving, it actually allows you to actually drill down into the report output by getting selected in a certain options. These are the three features, and without these three features, you cannot have your matrix report created. You need to have these three options in order to have your matrix report completed with all the data requirements. And once you have your grouping, summarizing, and drill down option, you actually go for configuring matrix report. When you are configuring a matrix report definition, you first must define the row of groupings, column, and summarizing data under matrix tab. You first need to define this because when you actually go to matrix report, unlike your advanced report, you will not see fields adding step by step. There are multiple options columns matrix drill down. There are multiple options which you will be using for creating this kind of reports. Now coming to actual configuration of matrix report. Let me open and show you the options of matrix report. And then accordingly we will be creating one matrix report. Before I actually share my screen, I wanted to share something on row groupings. Because most of matrix report, what we have currently are the kind of matrix report which actually in your data summarization, such kind of options you will be selecting when you create a matrix report. Row grouping is one important thing which actually groups multiple employees and returns the output based on the grouping criteria that you have selected. And for each of report matrix that you create minimum at least one row grouping that you need to specify, and maximum you can specify 8 row groupings. You cannot leave blank and you cannot exceed more than 8. That's a kind of raw grouping concept that you need to note, which will help you when you're managing. Now let me go ahead and create one visualization report on matrix which gives headcount report based on the department. When I say department, it is nothing but a cost center. By cost center, data will be returned. Considering the legacy, you know the kind of location that will be sending and the headcount that employee will be having. We'll be considering all this and get you a kind of data visualization report which returns data in the form of chat and other formats. Probably we'll create a report and then we'll make the chat selection. Now the same step, whatever you have gone through custom report advance, you will be actually going the same step. Custom report matrix. Matrix would be your report type. What is my requirement? I need to actually populate the headcount of the employees based on their hire date till as of date, and all those terminated employees will be grouped by location, address, country where you'll be having all the employees in this category. I'll select the data source. Select your data source and move further. You will be getting the report, definition page of matrix report, where you need to specify your groupings and your column groupings. Column grouping is an optional one. But here you need to define the summarization of the things. When I say summarization field, let's say I have a round. You know what is the content we have for this thing. Let's say if I wanted to report employee data by cost center and by country and in the data, whatever system is returning, I wanted to have the data divided for employees as well as continued workers. Now you'll be creating matrix report. The maximum number of row groupings I said what we can use is 8. But I can't take 8 groupings because the dashboard also needs to be configured in that way. I'll take location as address country. I'm taking location, address country as a kind of row grouping. A column grouping is an optional. I don't want to take column grouping, but I wanted to summarize the data. I wonder if somebody's digitized. And the summarization will be true. We wanted to have the value populated based on the selection that you will be giving, and summarization type would be the 7. Summarization field would be your employee. 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 when you go for any kind of summarize. Now, when you have your summarization configured, you also need to have your summarized data. Actually, which is nothing but which actually populates all the details of the information. Right, right. Which actually gives you actually employee details. You know, when you're running a report, you can give in all the information. All right. Employee. 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 for this section. This we should be good with. Now we have given detailed data with some basic information which actually needs to be mandatory when you're creating detailed data for any kind of headcounts. Now we need to actually filter the data now. In that report, if you wanted to add any kind of available fields and generate any whatever fields that you wanted, only you need to do. Even this a go with the. Now I have the level details that I wanted to know properly in case. When you create a matrix report, on, you don't want any of the business user to actually access the personal information. After they create a matrix report from the output of the matrix report, if you don't want anyone to access the personal information that it matters consists of, you have two options here. Drill options. Whenever you have some confidential information like personal information, employees, gender, any kind of employee, an employee name at the time should not be populated in the name, which is a kind of confidential information. What we'll do generally is, in order to bypass the such kind of access, not to view any kind of confidential information, by drilling on into the report, we'll be actually disabling those options here. We'll disable populating. Giving access to drill down into the report will be actually based on the control we have here. We'll be controlling those building options here. Any questions for on matrix report? I know I was actually giving you data and trying to show you the options, how to actually view the data in a matrix graphical format. Any questions for in actually building options? Any other questions you have? Will I find any of the existing matrix report and get the report populated for you? Any questions? Any questions on matrix reports? Any clarification you need? You have any regular audit reports that goes with matrix, where any kind of compensation audit report, any kind of inner person information audit report that leadership team will be viewing, where you'll be controlling all those options you have. Any such kind of reports are there. I have some matrix report which is similar to the source that I wanted to have. I'll modify this report according to the need I wanted to have. Just remove all this. As I said, maximum we can have 8 row groupings actually, and minimum is 1. I don't want this many groupings because I don't want to mess the data people would have created as per practice, but generally we'll be having 1 or 2 row groupings. That's it. I wanted to have data to be populated based on. This would be if you're actually going for any kind of reporting certification, or if you're going for any kind of reporting test source with Workday. These are all the options. The Workday will be asking you, what is the max row groupings that you can add in matrix report? What is the minimum? You have all. It might make you a kind of confusion. Can we have matrix report? Can we create a matrix report without any kind of row grouping? Which is not possible, right? You cannot do that. Such kind of certification questions when you go with Workday. These are all the questions you will be having. Or you're actually applying for any report writer exemption request with Workday, a kind of test out. You know what they will be giving you. Those test out question answer will be including all these options, which are simple but tend to actually go with assumptions. Now I think we should have got some clarity. Any questions, anything specific to the options? I know I didn't run the matrix report. I will be running now. But before I run any questions on the options that we're choosing, Amit, I have a question. I can see options on row grouping, column grouping, and then summarization type. What is the difference between all three? All three options. Row grouping. Nothing, but in a hub data. If you wanted to have your grouping to be happening on column, you can do that. If you wanted to have the options column that we have on here. No, these are on the yes, these options. I'm asking. I can see it everywhere. Let me go there. Include these options. Like how you create an advanced report. You remember when you're creating an advanced report and when you have any currency field or numeric fields. If you go to the top right side of your advanced report, you will be having some options, right? If you wanted to show that currency amount as a kind of percentage, or if you wanted to populate any kind of dollar symbol on that one, or any kind of, you know, if you wanted to give finalized total amount on that column, that you'll be adding same options you have here. But to max, when you're actually doing any kind of, any kind of analytic or kind of visualization, what you can do is, if you have too many kind of, numeric or any kind of average kind of reports that you're making for business, is the kind of, total compensation that is actually paying for the same point. Such kind of information is there. You'll be actually going with this kind of, options. But now what we are doing is we are actually trying to get the count of contractors and employees, where we don't need these kind of options. We don't need symbol. We don't need any kind of total of, because we are not using any kind of numeric or currency values. We're just going with the counter. Since we have selected count, we'll be selecting that one. We don't need any kind of percentage, because count will give us a clarity on the output. Based on your data that you're giving, actually these options can be selected. But currency symbol, and all this percentage of columns, and all you can do it reporting them. If you remember advanced report options, you have seen kind of options based on the data that you choose in the advanced report. You'll be getting those options enabled. Now I don't want all this information, because this is nothing related to the count that I'm looking for. Did I answer your question? And I was asking yes, the what does the option mean on the row section. Yes, we see options here as well. Yes, these are the same kind of options. If you are selecting any kind of numeric fields, you'll be getting, make it as a kind of percentage. If you're selecting any kind of dollar amount, any kind of currency amount, you want it to have a dollar symbol that needs to be populated here. The same kind of options you'll be getting whatever I'm actually using any kind of text fields here. I don't want any kind of options to be chosen here. There's a reason why you're not getting anything. But in case, if I am actually selecting, you don't actually group through, any kind of amount based groupings. You'll not be doing. But that doesn't make sense. But let's see, for that option, we'll be actually coming up. This is not. I think this is not properly. Have all the live information on. Really, based on the data that you choose here, we will be getting options here. And we know when you see advanced report, the moment you select the currency related fields, options will be changing here in the extreme right side of your advanced report. Same kind of options you'll be seeing even in matrix report. I think there is something in the back end. Tenant level settings would have corrupted. That's the reason why you're not getting options. But generally, if you take any amount here, it will ask same option, whatever you're seeing here, percentage based option, or if you wanted to populate any kind of dollar amount to that one, you'll be getting this one. I think that you'll be actually mixing up with any of the values here. But generally the purpose is to have any kind of total values or percentage or currency, such kind of things. We can add it here. It will be same as the summarization section. I can choose from anywhere, right? You can choose from here. You can actually have all the options. You can also. Basically, you will go for detailed data. Whenever you're actually giving, you'll be giving what data that you wanted to have in the summarization type. You'll be giving your detailed data section. There you can add any kind of data. If you're actually looking for any kind of average, any kind of any kind of percentage based reports, you'll be actually going with these options. These options will be going. But here, if you see here, our requirement is to get the counter. To get the counter, if still the same requirement. If you want it to have to be populated at a percentage, employee percentage, or contingent worker percentage, you'll be actually selecting a percentage here, percent in columns, or percent in overall total. You'll be selecting and you'll be creating this report. But now our version is to actually have to have a count of the report actually. we will be getting with the detailed data section once we have the count populated. Whatever detailed data section that we'll be giving, it's actually kind of mandatory. If you are not given, the system will naturally kick you out with an error. Detailed data section would be a kind of option that we need to create for any kind of headcount reports that you're preparing. Let me give you why not. I'm going to start information here. And this will work. If your business wanted to have any kind of data visualization, any kind of practical format, you can actually configure that. And if your business wanted to have both graphical as well as tabular, you can actually get both options as well. In summarization, you can go with any the count or percentage or any kind of aggregation that you can. You wanted to have average, anything that you wanted to go. Nothing you can choose that you can actually go, but it must be based on your stakeholder needs, whatever they wanted to have. You can actually populate it accordingly. Amit, is it possible if you can run the report just with a limited set of fields rather than getting a lot of fields? I'm taking a minimum field only. I'm not taking too many fields, just 3 or 4 fields I'm taking because the report has got refresh rate. All the content that's gone. I have all the data. You can have filter that you wanted to have. You can do filter however you want to have. Same kind of prompt options. Now you can do prompting. And if you wanted to run your report based on any kind of date parameters or based on location, country, you can configure that. And if you wanted a filter for any kind of location, specific as per criteria, you can do this one. I will just run this without any kind of chart option. Let's see how it populates. Then I will configure any chart criteria that we need to have this report. This report is not shared with the login. That's the reason why it's not seeing options to run this report. Let's make sure whenever you create a critical report, even that team must be aware of the report that they should be able to manage. If you keep it not shared, they will not be able to identify and they cannot run it. Now I got employee count based on location and based on cost center. From US, we have 66 employees and this is the employee 66. Employee and contingent, we don't have 0. And similarly, if you take EK, you have both contingent as well as employee. Like that you have for each country, where we have group based on country and based on cost center. Right. There's a reason why you got this thing. And now same option. If you actually choose instead of row grouping and column, instead of row grouping, if you actually choose location or cost center as a kind of column grouping, your data will not be populated like this. Since these are actually populated as rows, right? Now we are. All the location and country will be populated as columns, and your whatever you have here, employee count and contingent count will be populated as rows. There's only difference when you actually choose data for your column groupings versus row grouping. Now let me actually make some tweak here to populate the data in a graphical format. That we'll see how it actually returns this. Amit, I have a question before we go to graph. I wanted to understand. We have overridden the detailed data, and how does that had impacted on the front end? We go to drill down. Here we get those options to get the detailed data. There is a reason why I was telling. When you actually run a matrix report is the only report that gives you option to drill down. No entire data, whatever you have added. You can go to the output and drill down into each of the shield that you wanted to have. And if we don't override the detailed data, we'll get only the count. We have only the point, not get anything. We can add those fields in the detailed data or write concept right. We can add the fields. You can add at the same time if there is any kind of confidential information that you have added there. You wanted to control, kind of drilling down into the field level information. I was showing the right disable drill down options, and all those options will be actually selecting that even when you have data here, you'll not have build on options here. I hope we don't have any field limitations over here. We can add a number of fields, right? You can add any number. Got it. Let me go to the output and share the chart format. Same report. Probably we'll try to do tomorrow also to actually configure in dashboard and see how we can run this report in dashboard. Since now we have a table, we are not seeing any chart. I can configure chart and table. You can also configure only chart if you wanted to have. And we have multiple chart types. Column cluster. If you want it to have to be populated in the bar format, in a chart bar you can get it. And in a pie chart format, you have a donut and all other options. You know you have something in a bubbled format. You can choose this one and simple, without any kind of graphically. If you wanted to have a simple line format, you can do this, but mostly column cluster people will be using. We'll see. We've taken a 2 or 3 options and how output varies. And accordingly, we'll see how which is actually giving a kind of better as part of data visualization. Now in the format you see here, if you select the yes, you're having the count of years, and if you select any specific country here, you can go to each of the countries and identify what is the count you have there. And similarly, you can actually make this kind of row grouping and column grouping concept applicable for any kind of requirements that you get. Let's say if our recruiting team asked you, hey, I wanted to have all the employees who have got hired from different recruiting agencies like LinkedIn, like the website, like the Glassdoor kind of potential. I wanted to have all the employees who have got hired from different sources. Kind of information the recruiting team will be asking you. The same kind of configuration you'll be doing. What you would be grouping there? You'll be grouping agency, recruiting agency. You'll be grouping with recruiting agency. Similarly, where you're getting like countries here, right? You'll be getting a recruiting agency. And whatever count you're getting, you'll be getting same count from each recruiting agency. And let's say tomorrow, if you have the same kind of requirement and your business is asking, I wanted to know, members of each organization. Let me count from each of these supervisor organization we have based on the location. If there is a kind of requirement that you have, what do? You'll be grouping through supervisor, organization, and location. Right. And this kind of the reports you cannot actually integrate with any integrations. That's the reason why you don't have an option to make this matrix report as a web service enabled report. And the same format that you're seeing on the screen. If you download, you will not see the same format. Your chart will go off and your tabular data will be extracted. You cannot download You cannot actually integrate the chart information from one system to another system or cannot extract your chart information into any file format. Any questions for? If you are aware of getting this kind of logics, there is a kind of concept if you are actually getting into core reporting team, core reporting analytics team. This kind of knowledge will help you to manage scorecards. There is a concept called scorecards, same kind of concept, but you'll be creating multiple matrix report and attaching to different report, which is called a kind of matrix. We call it as, and that will actually help you in giving more advanced analytics kind of feature or kind of experience for your business. That kind of experience that you should be able to give. When you actually deal with a lot of matrix report and get these days that combining multiple reports and make a kind of scorecards and configure the scorecard in a dashboard, give a kind of population of all the data, what percentage that you're getting here, the same percentage will be getting in multiple dashboard, in a single dashboard for multiple outputs. You'll be seeing which would be a kind of the end date data visualization kind of part as part of analytics, which will be giving a kind of end user experience with the quality. That's the kind of matrix report, which is a kind of for giving a kind of data visualization. We actually go with this kind of approach. This can be done with headcounts. This can be done with any kind of feature accretions that we wanted to know what would be the percentage. If 10 employees have put on papers and they are getting terminated sometime in the month of September. And if some employees would have kept papers sometime last week and they are getting terminated sometime in the month of end of August. If you wanted to know all the accretion ratio, feature accretion ratio that you wanted to know, you can create similar kind of reports and current determinations found that you wanted to have. You can know. Now we only took, count of employees, but we are not specifying anywhere whether the employee is terminated or whether employee is active. If I filter, I will be able to filter with active and terminate employee data. But here, nowhere we have specified employee should be active or terminated. But if you specifically have a requirement that you're reporting, the should give you know all the termination count or percentage of the termination count versus active employee count, you can go with the same approach. Basically, these are all the options you'll be having as part of, data visualization requirements from your business. And main employee count, female employee count, all these things you'll be managing in a kind of matrix format and configure that matrix to your dashboards. Clear on this? Any questions? Clear on? The kind of requirements that will be getting in as part of matrix report creation. Any requirements that you have other than what we have discussed? No, I was telling you like head count, termination count, future termination count, the kind of, scorecard count of information and all that I was telling you, right? Anything other than, which you see, which was not covered that you wanted to cover here. Amit, we do get requirements for, future termination data and future terminations data. Can we show the trend through matrix report? Like a trend of. Why do you go with matrix? You can go with standard, right? We have to create a trended report for that. trended report. Future termination is nothing but a kind of you wanted to. Actually, you can go with matrix also. But if you wanted to know the trend of terminations, I think trended would be the best option. Thank you. You wanted to have. You wanted me to create a trended report for future terminations, or you want me to go with the audit report for analytics, for covering analytics. Termination event. You are seeing right. Yes, we need to call from termination only. We, since we will be creating our report in, different business object. We'll try to get that term into worker business object. In order to get data from which is actually kind of multi-instance thing to worker related business object, we basically go with called extraction instance. It is mostly used to function in the updated field. For all typical and complex reporting, in order to look up the data into primary from related business object, we will be actually using extraction instance. Termination sequence are completed. Amit, we are trying to expand the future term date here, right? Which means that if the employee has put down his papers, if he's serving the notice period, then the last date of his notice period, right? All the future terminations. If termination event is secured, and if the termination event last working day has got mentioned, this calculated field will be recognized. When we create this field and when we run it for worker, we will get yes or no's in the worker data set, which will be telling us that whether that employee will be terminated in future or not. Correct? Any guess what function that we'll be using now? Have you seen it? What is that? Look up. What is this data source that they're using here? Amit, the same that worker that we have used it. There are multiple, Linda. I'm actually doing the next one. We have multiple data sources workers from HCMN, reporting workers by organization. We have, I don't know why. This is the second calculate field that I created. No, this is a report. I'm not a calculator. You're pulling that calculated into a report. We'll be creating a report and we'll be adding this calibrated to whatever we have written into this report. I was just meeting. I don't know whether that is there in this tenant or not. That's the reason why it's created that one. This will give inbuilt prompts for managers to actually access all the data. I've selected advanced, but in case if you wanted to have a look with the different graphical format, you can just choose matrix. Since we are going with the workers by organization date, it actually drills down into the organization and checks on the employee status. Amit, we wanted to have a look for matrix report for future termination. Is there a way where we will be able to convert this advanced report into matrix report? Is there any conversion point? Because we wanted to look at the trend or the count which will be coming in the future. You just change. You know you can add an output. You know if you wanted to change the output format. But no, matrix will be having different option. But we are actually going with the matrix only. If you wanted to go for trending information on, probably there is a data source called the trended workers. It will be giving all the trend information. All trend information can be actually managed in trended data source. Actually, once 1. If you're looking for a trended information, probably a trended source will actually be the proper information. I know it's a simple report, but I'm not taking much time. I'll also try to show that as well. You just need to know for which period that you wanted to actually have the trended termination list of information. I just added this column. which is actually gives you attrition, trend action. We wanted to do by quarter. In this quarter, how many has got? What is the trend of termination in this quarter? Based on quarter, and you can actually do. Sort of the way we would like to see the trend for attrition, or we should take some kind of requisitions. Trend which we have. That's two requisitions, I think. Can we have that in the student? I don't know what we want to see. I don't know about but we can create a requisition. We need to get some requisitions, but that's this. We have one feature data terminations. We can actually take that example and look for a kind of a termination. If you're looking for attractions, attrition trend in our trending report, but we can also do with the requisitions. But we need to see if based on the output. If nothing is returning, we need to actually create some. What do you want? You want to go with the terminations. I'm fine with terminations also. I think both would be the same. What ultimately, you need to have the data. That's it. If you are looking for requisitions or terminations or any new heights rehives. All the thing is you need to have the data. In that sense, we know what field that we need to use for each of this category, right? You need to know the field type and the data that you need. If you don't have the data, if you are using it in the sandbox or any implementation, then try to, get requisition created or hire an employee or rehire an employee or, perform any kind of terminations to handle any kind of information. Let me go ahead and start creating a trended report, which is actually a kind of important one, basically for leadership team. When you wanted to actually give that information and all the categories. I don't know. I haven't seen on requisitions, but I've seen mostly on terminations, mostly on new heights, mostly on rehives. There's such kind of training information I've seen. I didn't get any requests on requisitions, but you can try, having any kind of requisitions. How many requisition flows are going? How many are getting filled? How many are getting cancelled? Frozen, how many are getting freeze and all? All this kind of information you should be able to know when you're actually configuring requisition information in the same summary. But there is no configuration of a trended report is a little different than matrix, then advanced, which I want you to know that. Let me go ahead and create. Amit, typically we have requirements from business, definitely when it comes to requisitions on the hiring events, on the recruitment events. Of course, open and field requisition is one of the attributes, but on recruitment events, how the recruitment events are, processing. Those kind of requirements we usually get. And I wanted to see how that business process when we work on those business process event in trended worker or in matrix. I wanted to, understand those configurations. For now we can see future terms. Let me see. Let me run one standard report on job requisitions and see. There is an opportunity to find, or else I'll do some kind of transactions and get some data. I wonder if there is anything currently open to date or anything that has got a bunch of information that has got. I see something on mostly. I see something historical information. Let me do some transactions and get some minor test data for us in order to see the trend of open versus close versus frozen versus that are actually closed. Let me do some transactions and take in our own 5 to 6 examples to actually make that transaction to be returned in the output that we'll be creating. Let me do that, and probably I can take this as an action item for tomorrow and get whatever you're asking. Business process transaction related, right? We'll make some kind of categorized between closed, filled, open, and see how those are populating, when we create a trend, see how it actually returns. Let me do some transactions, a few requisition transactions, and that requires this. The tenant is actually configured with a lot of approvals. If I go ahead and start getting requisitions, it will take to some approvals, and to do some approvals, it might take a little time. But let me take this as an action item and get all the transactions with requisitions. And I know that ended. I know that you wanted to look. Probably we can do that as a kind of first thing when we start tomorrow. But the format, whatever we'll be doing will be the same. And even the one that I'm going to show now is actually also mostly. I don't know whether you're currently using that report or not, but this is also a kind of mostly used and the required report, which is in case. If you're not using, in case if you don't have this format, just record this format and, do this kind of report for you and for any kind of HR stakeholders, which would be helpful for you. I'll be using trending as a kind of report type and trended data source for trended workers, which will be giving all the trend information of future terminations or MIHOITs, anything, any of this data. Can get paid. This is actually preferred data source and report it if you wanted to view any trended information. I wanted to actually view the information of terminations by quarter. We have a delivered quarter. What I can do is in order to get this is an important thing which you wanted to know. That you will be getting a complete year based on the selection. and take the basically, the important one for you is to actually calculate the summarization, the only important thing. You can actually all this information. Whatever I'm trying to find out here, those must be available in Trended. We're not getting anything from worker object in beginning from the Trended worker business object. A worker is different and Trended worker is different. See here, this would be business object for Trended workers. All the Trended information, if you wanted to pull, will be in Trended business object, Trended workers business object. When you are actually creating your report and Trended type, you should be able to take all the fields that are sitting in this business object. If you take worker anything other, your results will not be appropriate. I don't think those will be populated. At least all the fields that you will be getting here are from Trended only. You can replicate the same scenario for any other report, any other requirements. Even the recruiting also will be coming in the same scenario. Some kind of cricket fields needs to be created. If anything is not there, if you wanted to know the specific type of termination reason, whether it's voluntary, involuntary, anything that you wanted to know. If your things are not available, probably you need to take some kind of field. I'm taking it since we have configured in our report with the grouping year, month, and year quarter. I just wanted to compare the data accordingly. If I run the report, not selected any specific format, but if I run the report, we'll be able to see the output in a yearly quarter format. First of all, I've taken that. Let's see. Since the reverse, last year first quarter, you're seeing 4 terminations. Since you know this is a test in a data prospector, I don't think correctly, but look up the trends that we have for last year. We see 4 terminations. For Q2 we have, and for Q3, Q4 we don't have. In total, we got around 4 terminations where we have turnover rate is calculated as a kind of concentrate. We got this. Such kind of trend information you can do. Not sure whether if you run with future date you will be getting or not. But you can do in actual tenant in your live tenant. You should be able to manage this with the same kind of format. What you know you're able to. We're able to see the trend rate for each quarter. We should be able to manage that with future. First quarter we have, second quarter we have, but rest of the things that we don't have. Before you actually get anything, if you wanted to get any trended information, there is a task that you need to perform. If you don't perform the task and looking for any information from trended report, you will not be able to get that information. There is a task called maintain. These are the 2 tasks that we need to actually perform in order to this is a job actually. You need to actually refresh this job. As on when you wanted to have your data refreshed, and it will take around 1 hour, I think, to actually refresh and get all the data into a trended business object. Then you should be able to see accurate data. This is one of the jobs that you need to maintain in order to have your data accuracy for trended workers to actually view all the trended information. A mid report writers can refresh this task. This is a report only, but in report writer the type of report is different actually. One report type is different. For trended workers, not for all the work, all the reports. You have this job that can actually run and get the data. But for only trended, the business object is similar separate right for this one. If you're looking for any kind of trend information, all that data has to sit in a worker business object. When you actually refresh this, one data will be routing to trended worker business object. and it will be actually sitting once you actually create. But if someone is not using trended workers, if this task itself is not there, you need to actually enable this task and start using, you know, your trended workers related to activities. Most of the people, what they'll be doing is they'll be going with the worker by business or worker by organization and choose matrix report and give a date range and view the data. And think that data is a kind of trends. This is the kind of termination point that we have in this one. Kind of the results will be evaluating, but to certain cases those will be not accurate because those are coming from worker business object, right? Not coming from trended business object. If you wanted to have the actual trend information, actual trends that you wanted to know, your trending report type and trending worker business object will be a kind of accurate one that gives accurate data. Do we need to create these configurations before we use that business object? You'll have access to this one. You'll have access to this one. This comes with the report right away. You'll have access to this one. And if there is any kind of segment based or intersection security that your security team would have created, that to bypass. On the configuration access, that is a different case. But generally, you'll have this access. You need to run this job in order to get on the. You should be seeing all the configurations that is there in trended workers from when you wanted to have trended information from this is actually configured from 2013. You can do this. All this configuration, if it is not there in your tenant, if you're actually looking for any kind of, let's say, if you're long life with Workday sometime in 2015, make that date as a kind of, trended start date and the kind of appropriate one that you need to set up. But if you wanted to do yearly, quarterly, you can go yearly half a day. You can select anything. You know that you wanted to say. And before you try in actually production, I think you know your tenant would have got this configuration. And because most of the tenant reports are actually used by leadership team, I believe tenant reports would have got created in your tenant. Just take a look. It's not enabled just to enable that one and start. Using this feature and whatever report that I've created will be actually helpful for you in managing trend information for quarter. I've taken as a quarter. Yearly quarter I've taken. But if you wanted to go yearly once, yearly half early or yearly month also, you can go. If you wanted to view monthly kind of transactions, you can go with monthly view also. Makes sense. Any question? For all the trended reports, we'll be having that one task to perform before we run the report. Maintain a trended workers is a kind of trended workers. If you're not able to, find that one, just to view security for security rule item this, everyone will be having this access. This won't be restricted. You say first item, I know what security that would be needing, and if your security is restricted, ask them to grant that access. This comes with the system function. And what is it? Generally, your organization related security group has to be under permanent. Permanent, let's say, for the report writer or any kind of workforce analytics, right? Kind of common security for you. That security has to be here. It's not there. Just ask your security to get access to this task that you should be able to run whenever you want it to have. Basically, once you run that, it automatically refresh all the time. Until you get the task created, there is actually the matter. But once you have the task created, you should be able to manage that one. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel. For more information, contact us sales@uptalk.com.